Welcome to Conversations That Make a Difference with your host, Teresa Velardi. We believe that authentic, meaningful, and diverse conversations are the glue that binds us together. Our discussions remind us we have the power to uplift, challenge, stretch, and invite dynamic growth. Are you, like many, feeling like you're flying by the seat of your pants through life? Join us for conversations filled with gratitude, values, abundance, authenticity, and faith. Here's the host of our show, Teresa Velardi.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Conversations That Make a Difference. I'm excited to be with you here today with a couple of the ladies, a few ladies today, 3 different women coming on our show today. Our return guests, Andi Buerger and Blanquita Cullum, and we have Gayela Bynum joining us today. We're in for a great conversation, but before we get started, we always say with the Serenity Prayer. So let's do that together. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And it is by God's grace that we are fabulous, blessed, highly favored, living in our greatness, using our gifts and talents, making a difference in the lives of others with passion and purpose. And all of God's great universe is conspiring in our favor, collaborating in our favor. And together we say, amen. We gratefully say amen. I'm excited to have you ladies with us. Today, we're going to talk about, once again, a topic that is familiar to listeners at Conversations That Make a Difference, human trafficking. And it leaves far more things than visible scars. Survivors often carry deep emotional wounds that can affect every aspect of life, including their physical health. And in this powerful conversation that we're about to have, Andi Buerger and Blanquita from Voices Against Trafficking, and Gayela Bynum, and her not-for-profit organization is called We Will Survive Cancer, WWSC. We are going to together explore the connection between chronic trauma, toxic stress, and long-term health. So whether those of you are listening are a survivor, an advocate, a health professional, or someone who wants to better understand the lasting impact of trafficking, this conversation with these beautiful ladies is going to offer you some oversight, some compassion, and encouragement. Let me introduce them all to you one at a time. We're going to start with Andi Buerger, who is an international speaker, author, survivor of child sex trafficking, advocating globally for victims of exploitation. She founded Beulah's Place, rescuing 300 plus teens that are at risk, and later founded Voices Against Trafficking, co-founded that. What you see on the screen is her book, Voices Against Trafficking, and she is uniting voices worldwide to defend human rights. Her books and the internationally distributed Voices of Courage magazine empower survivors and honor human rights champions. In 2025, Voices of Courage Television is forthcoming. We are still hoping for that to happen. And she is expanding her mission to inspire justice and hope. And you see her first book out there, Voices Against Trafficking. And then we have the Honorable Blanquita Cullum. And Andi, welcome. I always love to have you on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And the Honorable Blanquita Cullum. This woman is unbelievable. I love her. She's an award-winning broadcast journalist, Texas Radio Hall of Fame inductee, and former Senate-confirmed governor of the U.S. Broadcasting Board of Governors, where she chaired several international broadcasting committees. A nationally recognized radio host, Blanquita emceed the National Memorial Day Parade in Washington, D.C. for 20 years, and served 9 years as president of the National Association of radio talk show host. She is president and co-founder of Voices Against Trafficking and an associate editor of Voices of Courage magazine. Currently, she executively produces International Reporters Roundtable and serves as an on-air media coach for the Epic Times NTD network. Welcome, Blanquita. It's always good to have you here. You're muted, sweetie. You're muted.
Okay, I am unmuted. I am free.
You are free.
And
You are
happy
free to.
with all, three of my favorite friends. I'm so happy to be with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. And the newbie to the show is
Hey!
Gayela Bynum. Welcome, Gayela. You are the founder of WWSC, We Will Survive Cancer, a nonprofit established in 2009 in honor of Gayela's daughter-in-law, Michelle. WWSC provides financial assistance, food, wigs, and support services to cancer patients and their families, serving the community for over 16 years. A retired federal employee, Gayela is also the author of Don't Waste My Cancer, volumes 1 and 2. You see them on the screen with all those beautiful faces. She highlights stories of hope and resilience. She is a charter member of Voices Against Trafficking and has received numerous honors for her volunteer service, community leadership, and dedication to supporting individuals facing cancer. It is an honor to have you with us, Gayela. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for including me in this important conversation.
You're so welcome. Thank you for saying yes to the invitation. Your voice is needed to be heard today. So why don't we start with you? Tell me what you think or what has been learned about disease in relationship to trafficking. And there is a connection. I'm sure body, mind, and soul are all connected. So I'm sure that all kinds of ailments come from the trauma of having been trafficked. What brought you to Voices Against Trafficking and the conversation about cancer?
So as working for the federal government, trafficking was one of the issues that I really worked on. And I was at Housing and Urban Development. And of course, trafficking and those kinds of issues are huge in the government specter of looking at what's going on. So I happened to be at a seminar at Johns Hopkins a few years ago, and one of the speakers there was from the CDC in Atlanta. And as it turned out, he mentioned that it made the correlation of cancer and trafficking. And I had already had We Will Survive Cancer for several years after that. And it was very impactful to me to try to figure out how to put the two together, and so I've done some research, and I was blessed to be asked to be a charter member of Voices by Andi and Blanquita. I met them at an event actually on Capitol Hill. So at that time, it tied in the two things. And still, we've been working on trying to figure out how to bring this forward to make it an issue that really hasn't been discussed much.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's one that absolutely needs to be discussed because cancer is rampant. All different kinds of cancer are rampant. Yeah. And there's a lot of conversation about the origins of cancer, that if you have particular kinds of cancer, it's caused by, there's an emotional component to it. And that's what I think is most important here in this conversation today with relative to cancer, because the traumatic, I can't even imagine the trauma of going through something like these women and children and even young men go through right. as a result of being trafficked. So there's got to be that connection to not only cancer, but other illnesses along the way as well, besides the sexually transmitted diseases. Let's not put that on the side there too. So what else have you found out about this, and how does your organization support Voices in their efforts?
Um, well, the organization that to me, it's really an important issue that I have been dealing with for several years and thinking about. Um, it's in exploratory right now. We're doing research. I've been working with Blanquita, and Andi, I believe, has been informed, but just going and trying to find out all the different organizations that may be interested in doing this, trying to connect with people like Tim Tebow. And I understand that he's going to be in Baltimore. So I'm trying to figure out how I can go and maybe run into him.
Oh,
I love it.
Excuse me, you good-looking football player who's wrestling the world. Can we have a conversation?
Right, because I haven't had any luck right now trying to go through his people. So I think that if I could tackle him, maybe that might work. I don't
tackle you back.
He's very,
I'm short.
but he's very community conscious,
Yeah.
and the thing of it is, what Gayela has done is put a light on something that no one has talked about.
There you go.
Think about it. After these children, and Andi, as a survivor, can attest to this. It's a miracle you survive.
Right.
And they really, after you get a kid out, and if you're lucky to rescue them, and they can get to some safe house or whatever, years go by. Nobody's following up to find out whether these kids have had any kind of diseases, not just social diseases that we call it, but mental health diseases. And when they've been brutalized at very young ages, and we know the cancer is encouraged or increased by pressure and stress and anything where the body has been traumatized. I would suspect, and I know Andi and Gayela and you, Teresa, with all these organizations that we try to work in cooperation with, if we can start finding out now how many people that they deal with, even in their own organizations who have been trafficked, have had cancer, that would be outstanding. I mean, it'd be alarming, but at least we'd start being able to look at this legitimately and talk about the other terrible aspect of this evil.
Right, exactly. You're so right. And just the fact that the door for conversation about this is open through the research that you're doing, Gayela, is a huge thing. And people like we're talking about Tim Tebow and there are several others who are advocating for justice for those who have been trafficked and help and healing for those who've been trafficked. And it's time. It's beyond time, right, Andi? What do you think?
Absolutely. It's never too soon, always too late to get on board. But as Gayela was saying, I think I first heard of the research about 6 years ago through Elise Tobler-Price, who's in Australia. And she has like 2 PhDs and I don't know how many other things, but those 73 illnesses, cancers are real. I know that. I struggled most of my life, probably first 30 years, horrifically with respiratory issues and lung issues and back issues and structural issues and all kinds of stuff, let alone, I'm sure I had quite a few knocks to the head besides the ones I already have had, as an adult. That's why I always say they're adult TBIs and concussions, because I'm sure, as a kid, nobody knew about that stuff. But to Gayla's point about, bringing it forward and getting it out there, we need to let people know that it goes beyond giving food, giving clothing, giving shelter, giving them job skills, putting them through school or in school, that they have a lifetime sentence for what has happened to them. And they need to also be educated on how to speak to a health professional, whether it's a nurse or a family practitioner or a doctor or somebody, because they're not likely to go get those services if they don't feel safe, if they don't.
And to your point, Andi, that rings a bell, because not only do the kids or the victims need to know, how to be able to explain that to the doctors or the nurses.
Right.
There needs to be training for the doctors and the nurses and those people that are working with the victims to be able to ask the kinds of questions that they'll understand. You see, on their side as well. I was just thinking as you were talking about that years ago, probably before all of us were born, when women were raped or men were raped, they didn't have rape kits.
Right.
And
Right.
now they do. So perhaps there should be some new process that has a longer shelf life to be able to help some person, especially children or babies that have been brutalized, to be able to have some sense of a record of what was done or how it was done, to be able to determine any long-term health repercussions that they may suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. And on another show, Bishop Donna Hubbard talked about child ID kit that they offer for free, because it has DNA, a place for DNA, it has a place for fingerprints and all that stuff. Not just in case your child is lost, but if they're taken,
Right.
you know, that they can find that person faster than if they didn't have that information on hand. If the parent, you know, the child knows my parent has my DNA and my such and such, you know, they will come looking for me. Right. And so we have so many more things we need to do. But the great thing is we have Gayela, we have the Honorable Blanquita, we have you, Miss Host, and we are talking about this on a continuing basis, which eventually someone who's watched the show 1, 2, 3, 4 times is going to catch a whiff of what we're doing, because creating awareness, first of all, allows us to educate. And when we can create awareness and educate, we can inspire action, and action will then lead to prevention. And that is one of the keys, because we need to not only turn the demand for this kind of activity around so that it doesn't exist. Well, we probably won't get rid of depraved behavior, but for the most part.
But the consequences can be minimalized. The prosecutions can be harder. And we can have more responsibility on how we actually help the victims.
Yes.
You know, we've talked about it on this program many times that there was a period of time people just didn't even want to talk about it. They wanted to use the term human trafficking. They didn't want to talk about it if a child was being abused at school. People kind of just didn't want to know about it. And you had people that came out later saying, God, I wish there had been someone there to help me. And you were one of those people.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. I mean, decades later, people I would run into randomly, if they had known me in my younger days, well, we thought something was wrong, but we didn't want to say anything. You know, we didn't want to cause any more trouble. It's like, so you leave children that, you know, are being brutalized, you know, to pay the price for your discomfort. Yeah. And so we need to open that up. But with the cancer thing, you know, I've refused breast cancer 5 times, liver cancer once. You know, my body is under attack by autoimmunes, and autoimmunes are part of the 73 things that can happen. So whether someone, not everyone who has genetic data will have those diseases, but I do believe the trauma, as Gayela said, that is induced by even one act of sexual violation can activate those things. I really do, because our cells are responsive to what happens to us. Exactly. Little cells are saying, help, I'm hurt, you know? Yeah.
Gayela, what you've done here is that nobody else has talked about this. When you mentioned this to me, it was very exciting to hear the way your brain had kind of put this together, and the people that you're beginning to speak to within that framework of those folks, you know, that you've been dealing with your own organization. If this can get major attention, I think it will make a difference. It will save some lives big time, or at least help them be understood when they're coming forward to explain the trauma.
Yeah. And I think, like Blanquita said, you know, the ramifications in the medical field, for example, why don't they have maybe a special card in the dressing rooms or wherever, you know, when you get x-rays or you're in the exam room, maybe there should be something on the regular intake, they'll ask, do you feel safe? You know, your mental health, all of that. But maybe there should be something where it says, have you been hurt? You know, or if you've been hurt, tell us, or here's a safe space or a safe number or a safe somebody, you know, that you can talk to when you're done with your exam.
The problem with that is that there's very little medical attention. Sometimes it goes to people like that. They're exploited. They're allowed to suffer. They're allowed to die because human life is expendable to people like that would participate in that activity. So I think it's a great idea, but it's kind of like the flight attendants, you know, that came about through our friend. I can't think.
Airline ambassadors, Nancy Rivard. Yeah.
Right.
And they're not even, and to your point, Gayela, so people understand, we have the airline ambassadors. They don't work exactly through the airlines. They work with each other. And they have helped to see children on the flights that don't seem like they're really with the right person. Yeah. And they have worked a way to be able to go above and beyond to try to save those kids.
Yes.
Yeah. And, well, you know, we talked about with our friend the other day that has been doing research actually on the border of Thailand and Burma. And they have camps. They have camps of all these children that have been captured, and you know they're exploited, they're sold. Maybe their organs are taken. You know, I mean, there are all kinds of horrible things right now that I've discovered in the last couple of months that I just it's unbelievable to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe again going to that point of what you're saying, Gayela. Because if you've gone even through any kind of exam and you say, well, can you maybe tell me what, they're not going to tell you an outcome. They're kind of, they don't tell you it. But if you're a child or if they suspect that this child is a victim, there should be a way to be able to pose a question or two that could give them enough indication whether that child has been brutalized. Because I don't know if they necessarily feel there's a safe space there, because all the legal liabilities, but there's got to be a smart way that could be.
Yeah. And the conversation is what will bring about those answers. Is like, okay, well, let's talk about what are the ways that we could do this, you know, or what are the ways that we can help the medical community better, you know, grasp that, you know, 3 out of 5 women or, you know, 2 out of 6 men that come through there at any age is likely to have had, you know, some experience and at least develop more compassion, you know, for their patients.
And I think that, you know, as you're talking about, like talking to children who have been violated, they close up. They don't want to talk about anything because they feel like they're going to be something else is going to happen to them. So a lot of what I think needs to be done through the work that you ladies are putting into this and the work that we together are working to get out there, which we'll talk about the event that we're doing in September in a few minutes. But I think that bringing people into the fold who are able to talk to children in a way that they feel safe disclosing information, and it takes a lot of training and it takes a lot of personal control in order to be able to make that space safe enough for that information to come out. And then I'm sure that there are some testing that can be done for markers for certain cancers, you know, through blood and whatnot. But that stuff is foreign to this community right now. And what you're doing, Gayela, is opening the doorway in order for that conversation to be had to go further on. Because like we have a comment here, never thought about the connection of disease and trafficking, but it's the correlation. You can now see the correlation, you know, so it's anyway.
Well, then we have tragedies like the 140,000+ kids that were rescued, you know, in the recent months. Where is their healthcare system, right? How they're going to suffer not only the physical, mental, emotional of everything that happened, but where do they take that, especially if they're in a country that's not their original origin? And so we need to just keep the communication going about, look, this may not happen right now. I'm working on a case with the 6-year-old girl, you know, and it may not happen when she's 7 or 10 or 12. A lot of victims, they just plow, they go through forward like a snow plow. I'm just going to keep moving, just going to keep moving. No, I don't have any problems. Don't touch me. I don't want to, you know, they're going to go through all of that for a long time until maybe something does happen, or they have their first child, or they break a leg or something. And, you know, they start talking about things they would normally talk about, who knows, but there are those things that will happen to them down the road. And how do we prepare them so that they don't go backwards or exacerbate the PTSD we know they already have?
But the other thing, in Andi, is, and what you all have talked about, that I think has to be developed better, is a lot of those children that are getting the help are, some may be still concerned that the people who violated them or hurt them will get them. And if they've been ratted on, they're afraid they'll either be killed, or their family members will be killed, or someone will be hurt. So there has to be a way to be able to get the information. When the word safe, you know, when you think about the word safe, it's 4 letters, you know, and it's everything that you can imagine for a child. You know, if you've ever been afraid of the dark, if you've ever been afraid of someone being under the bed or in the closet, you know, many of those fears have just been imagined. But for these children who've been harmed, violated, mutilated, hurt, raped, to be able to be using the word safe and still having a fear that there is something out there that could get them or their family, that's got to be developed, and how to be able to help increase that feeling of safety so they can convey what's going on.
Right. And there is a low-level terror of being in a medical office for a victim, because you don't know what they're going to find out. You don't know if you're going to be forced to say something. I remember when I was in speech therapy at 13, and the therapist was really angry with me, and he yelled at me, which is not very professional, but didn't think I was working hard enough. But he wanted me to work with the birth mother, who is the orchestrator of all evil, on my issues. And I almost said, you have no idea what I live with. But I knew God gave me the presence to not say that, because then he would have, well, what's going on in your home, right? And then that would have been worse. So
and especially if your mother, who was the violator, found out, you would have been brutalized more than you already were.
Right.
Exactly. He would have had to tell the parent, because I was a minor. And so a lot of the added trauma comes from trying to get these victims to be able to get the help they need and come forward. And so, but conversations like this maybe will open up some of their minds, give people ideas like, hey, maybe we can share what we heard on, you know, Conversations That Make a Difference, and think about, gee, you know, maybe, how do we get this handled in our community?
Yeah, it's true. And so one of the ways that we have together brought light onto this subject is through what Dizzy D from the Soul 105 has put together for us, DJs Against Trafficking. And on September 26th, we're going to have an event. We did this last year in November, and we had a great response from people.
Awesome.
With even just, you know, the information and the awareness and the things that can be done and the things that can be looked at in terms of keeping your children safe. You know, most people don't realize that this is, oh, look at this, we're bringing the party to the show today.
And you know why that makes me happy? Because I started as a rock and roll disc jockey.
There you go.
Did for over almost
we'll
20
get you
years.
Behind the turntables there. Yeah, there you go.
That's great.
So this is, you know, the discussion panel that starts this whole thing off. It's 2 hours long, and there will be a lot of people that are coming together to talk about how to keep your kids safe, what to look for. You know, you talked about a few minutes ago about the fact that, you know, there are people, the airlines are trained, the stewardesses or flight attendants are trained to look for things that don't go together. You know, find those kids that are potentially abducted from their homes, and they're on a flight to who knows where because somebody decided to snatch them. And people don't think this is going on here, They don't think it's going on in the States as much as it's going on in other countries. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's going on in your own backyards.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so
it's happening at the border. You see, when you talk about having something that will show the DNA and all the background for a child, because some of these kids are being brought across the border not by the people who are their parents.
Right.
And then they're dumped, in a desert, or they're violated or sold, and they can't speak up. They have no ability. They're just little kids, and they were used as a check to be able to get across the border. I think that people don't understand, as a Latina, I speak as having had a mother who stayed as a Mexican citizen her whole life. Mexicans, they don't want that. Latinos don't want that. We don't like thugs. We don't like cartels. We don't like people. We love our children. And so the thing of it is, to not be able to honestly deal with that kind of evil when they're making $1 billion a month, these cartels, on human trafficking is obscene. It's horrible. Are we afraid to confront it?
Well, I think that's a big question. Are we afraid to confront it? And in so many ways, I think that there is a whole faction of people that are afraid to open their eyes to this because they're afraid of what they're going to find out, not only about themselves, but about the people who in their life who may have been doing some of this. And then they have to look at every relationship that they've ever had around them. Because, hey, listen, I heard of a situation in a local house, in a local church, that there was somebody who was grooming kids, and it was just it happens. It goes on in your own backyard. But the bottom line is, we are here not to stay focused on. We're looking for a solution. We're focused on a solution.
Correct.
Right.
So I was talking with somebody recently. I don't remember. There are too many people I talk to, but I was talking to somebody about human trafficking and about this issue, and they were like, "Oh, there's no human trafficking going on around here." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, Loudoun County is probably one of the largest areas of human trafficking in the country." And we've just had all of the World Cup and everything, and that's when children get brought in. They get carried all over the United States. And it's like, wait a minute, where are you coming from? How do you not know this is going on? It's on the news, and if you open your eyes, it's there.
Right. But they see the movies. They look at the movies like, oh, well, that doesn't have. There aren't any movies about the U.S. Somebody getting trafficked, but there are about outside the country. It's a little bit glamorized, but the point is well taken. I have no problem with the Taken movies or some of the other ones because a lot of parents let their kids go to sporting events unsupervised. Go take a year off before you go to college or you get a job, and go travel Europe like I did. But those were different times. I mean, think about, for those of us old enough to go back to the early 60s or 70s, where people were horrified if somebody found out that their husband, was into pornography or had those special magazines, whatever. Right. But those were tangibles, right? And it wasn't as prolific as it is when internet showed up, and now we have AI. And so we have got to, we're not going to stop the entire enterprise. What we can do is stop that next victim from being victimized. Yeah. We can help that next survivor create a new normal, like I had to, with really no guidelines, just kind of figure it out as you go. Yeah. But we want to make sure that our churches, our schoolyards, our sporting event fields, those things have eyes on them, have protection, have, kind of like the Guardians, but without having to have a jacket that says I'm a Guardian or I'm, neighborhood.
But I also think, to your point, we want to make it so common and normal, that people can have, like, you'll go into some bathrooms now. I've seen it in airports and other places that will have an information about trafficking where you can call. And if people can get that, it's like the old days when people were trying to stop smoking, or, we had advertisements, when Nancy Reagan did her Just Say No to drugs and things that seemed so basic, but it became very common and people started paying more attention to it. And now, for example, we have more people that are getting out there. I think even this week there's a conference in DC that's dealing with trying to fight trafficking and bringing on members of the Senate and the House. We need to keep it all bipartisan.
Yes.
We need to have everybody understand this doesn't affect one side more than the other. It's not right versus left. It's right versus wrong, as we say.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. And here's the other thing too. The oh my goodness, it just went out of my head. So you got the right versus wrong going, and I'm like, okay, you're absolutely right. There's information out there. There's movies out there. The Sound of Freedom. If for parents who have not seen The Sound of Freedom, I encourage you to see it, because this is where it starts. Maybe your child is a little cute child and is good for, would be a great child model. And they play on that. Yeah. And that's how it starts in the movie, The Sound of Freedom. Those kids get trafficked. And you just don't know. You just don't know who is going.
And what it means really now for a lot of people is you have to go old school. You got to know who are your friends, your kids' friends. Okay. You're not there supposed to be their pal. You're their parent. You got to find out, I can remember as a little kid, my mother was pretty strict, and she'd say, all right, well, do they have brothers? What's the father do? Yeah. My father gave us a safe word, and they'd say, look, if you call us and you use this word, we'll be there in a minute. And they made it so that you could tell them anything. They may not like to hear what you had to say, but how are they going to help you unless you tell them what's going on? And I think parents, they got to look and find out if they're watching things on their phone or on their computers that are enticing, that are propaganda, that are trying to reach out to them, if they're going on sites that are trying to take their pictures. I mean, also, I think the schools need to know the parents are involved. They need to know that you're not going to pull this junk with my kid without me watching. You may have a real good teacher, but the teacher may need the parent support.
And, I mean, look at what's going on in the schools today. All of this conversation about, male, female, gender differences, and the teachers are literally playing a role in these kids' confusion. It's
they
crazy.
are
absolutely. Why? Oh, go ahead.
One thing that I also want to say relative to the families, you got to look at, and this is what I wanted to say before, you have to look at the situation with domestic abuse also. Because there are people in domestic relationships that are abusive, that the husband may be trafficking the wife. This goes on. It happens right under their roof. And and they don't know how to get out. They don't know how to get out of it. It's not safe. It's not safe. And
there's a lot of situations, even in the schools, that you're reading about the teachers violating the kids.
There you go.
The thing of it is, or a minister or a priest or someone that we look to as I love the majority of ministers and priests. I think they're good people. Yes. But you're going to have a bad apple in there periodically.
Of course. It's a safe area to be in. Yeah.
And you got to be able to call them out. The same thing with the teachers. But they have to know that the parents are not afraid to be invested. And, numbers that the kids can have in case the parent's going to be late to picking them up at school, or you have to, if you're going to have your kid, it's an investment in their future as how they safely can get out of that period that they're under your guard.
Yeah, but can I raise the question? Thinking about the parents being involved in schools, and think about in some of the issues that the school system has gone against the parents because they've stood up for their kids. I mean, I had that kind of situation when mine were growing up, and it's really bad today, I think. I mean, especially you talk about the transgender thing with the boys in bathrooms and the whole thing. I mean, it's just, it's like upside down. I don't know.
And why should one faction have any more say than the other. Here's the thing that people forget about human trafficking. At its core, it is about humans, not their gender, not their race, not their religion, not their socioeconomic background, not their politics. It's about the human being. So no matter what, we are charged, if we are truly good people, that, with protecting the rights of every single human being that is being exploited or approached, wrongfully. And I go back to this one example because it's still in my head. California case maybe 3-4 years ago. Preschool teacher. He had been there about 6 months. Somebody caught him being inappropriate with one of the 4 or 5-year-olds. Now, what they didn't do was ask about his background. They didn't do a background check for sexual predator type stuff. They did the basic, just the skimming. He had been at 12. That was the 12th preschool. He had been to 11, did the same thing, would move every 6 months. Every 6 months, 2 different states. Who didn't do their due diligence? Okay. Yeah. The schools allowed all those little babies to be violated because somebody didn't do their job to vet properly. And Blanquita was talking about the parents. I don't see anything wrong if the parent or the guardian in charge is the one giving the child the cell phone. There have got to be, okay, here's what you can use this for. If the child won't share or doesn't use it that way, then we have to have the guts to say, you know what? I'm going to take this right now. But when you're ready to respect the rules of how we use this phone, you can have it back anytime. Or we're not trying to police you. We're trying to protect you. So let's talk about what we can do on this phone and what we can't do.
And let's think about a time. When I started in broadcasting 8 million years ago.
And you look so good.
So much. But, there were things you could say and you couldn't say.
That's right.
Right.
There was a time where we were very careful about the kinds of things that children could see and words that could or could not be said. Now, of course, with the advancement of the internet and with social media and so forth, children have access to anything. Also, in schools, you had the libraries that had the books that were very carefully selected to be for children, to be able to check in and out. Now you have books in there that would be shocking for many adults to be able to have access to. So I think the word that people are dismissive of, and they don't realize, for me, there's certain words that are very valuable. The word safe, but the other word is innocence.
Yeah.
We look at innocence and we want to just treat it in a cavalier way. With a baby or with a young child or a teenage person that is going through their own developmental issues, we just blow it off. Oh, kids are being kids. No. They have a right to be protected and their innocence to be protected and not to take it for granted. And unfortunately, we've become very cavalier about that. And it's a sad thing. Because even when you have these issues of people making a decision that a child that can't even go out and buy a pack of cigarettes can have a sex change, some of the kinds of things that they give people that they try to help if there have been pedophiles and they inject it in young boys and girls, they have parts of their anatomy that are taken off. I think that if we want to be able to respect people, we should give them the right of their individual decisions at a time that is appropriate.
That's right.
Have a certain age when people can drink, a certain age when people can drive, a certain age for people when they can legally get married. Why can't we have this same kind of protection for the innocent?
Exactly.
Absolutely. And look at what happens with those sex changes. A lot of times there is a lot of regret by the young people that have done that, but they felt either coerced or pressured, and they shouldn't have that pressure at school. That should be a family discussion or some other discussion. But like you just said, they can't smoke, they can't drink legally, they can't drive, and they can't vote. But by golly, let them change their entire physical body at the age of 7 before they're even truly fully formed. And so
and the thing of it is, there are people like me, if you want to change who you are, later, do what you want to do with your body
at an age appropriate level.
Impose that decision on a young child that has not even had their period yet, or have their voice drop, or have a decision to be able to make this is life threatening that they can't get it back.
Right.
Exactly. And,
Exactly.
and at the end of the day, we're supposed to protect all of their rights, not to have some other teacher or adult in their life decide. Those are not their children. The parents
Right.
of those children, whether they're adopted, foster, or organic, doesn't matter. The parents of those children until they're 18 have the right to raise as they see fit, as long as it's not abusive or anything else
Correct.
that's illegal, right? Okay.
Right.
So then, the schools should be spending more time on, reading, writing, arithmetic, and other things. And yet we still have no official curriculum, which is something Voices is working on. Teresa, I'll share that in a minute, in the schools that talks about human trafficking, what it is, what's grooming, because it goes way past stranger danger.
Yeah.
And so Voices Against Trafficking is looking to find that college or university that's willing to be a pilot program for the Voices of Trafficking University Tour, where we go to the campuses and we lay out, we can put a whole course together. It's under humanities with special emphasis on human trafficking, have different speakers like we have Gayela that take a piece of that, present that so that we inform the young people. Right now, the most dangerous place for a female is the college campus, ages 18 to 24 years old. Okay,
Wow.
the boys are climbing in numbers too, but right now that would be the place. They're also the most likely to be influenced by predators who want to groom them to be predators, to go
Right.
recruit other students to come to this party, come to this event, you look like you could use a friend, I have this thing that's going on at my dorm, whatever. And then in, moments they are taken. So that's one of the main things I'm passionate about that we have been talking about initially, and we're putting it out there more strongly because the last couple of years, I feel like if we get to that group in person around the country, at least, then maybe we can stop future generations, but also get that swell of youth that we
And
need.
think about it.
Yeah.
Think about it. It is a human rights issue. We
Yes,
talk about
absolutely.
human rights. We want people to respect people regardless of their changes, of their choices, of what they want to do, who they want to be, their religion, their color, any of that. But human rights, we have a lot of human rights violations that are being conducted that are equal to slavery.
Yes.
Right.
Human trafficking is worse in a way.
Yeah.
And violation of these young people's bodies without their consent after they're a certain age, it's taken for granted that you're taking their choice.
Right.
They may say they're making a choice at 7 years old, but heck, the next week they don't know whether they want to be Batman or they want to be Superwoman.
That's
The
right.
fact of the matter is,
Exactly.
they should have an opportunity. I mean, because it is a human rights issue that you cannot restore when it's been taken away.
Exactly.
They have to live the consequences of someone at a position politically or medically or personally that made that person almost like a medical experiment.
Right.
And I worry about that.
Yeah, to control for power or pay or whatever it is. But here's the thing. I find it ironic that the people doing the most influencing have already had their childhoods, but yet they want to take other parents' children's childhoods away. A child should be able to play in the grass, roll in the dirt, whatever it is, have ice cream dripping down their face, whatever it is, because that is the age of innocence.
Yes.
And yet somehow we have allowed schools, we have abdicated our roles as aunts, uncles, parents, whatever you want to call it, in being due diligent. And it's not about policing. It's about protecting and valuing. Hey, I may not have my own kids, but I'm going to watch my neighbor's kids. If they look like they might be, getting into something that could be dangerous, even if it's just running across a busy street, right?
I can tell you the case of a very famous minister and he and his wife went to the movies. And the little girl had to go to the restroom, okay? She went into the restroom. Well, she was 8 years old. She could go to the restroom by herself, right? They were in a pretty safe theater. She went to the restroom, and the little girl didn't come back. Thank God the mother had her senses together, and she had the theater shut down. They had locked that little girl in the bathroom, and they were going to abduct her.
Oh, my
So
God.
it takes
a village.
Time that kids, if they got to go with them.
Mhm.
I know
Right.
you want to see the darn movie, but go with them.
Right.
You know, check on them. Have them call you. How are things going? Because sometimes they're going to be afraid to call you. Oh, I know my mother and dad, they're so old fashioned. I'm sorry. I have to call my mom and check in. I mean, you got to do it, because really taking that, let me know when you get to a certain place. Call me when you get there. Call me when you arrive. I mean, those are old school things, but it can save a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no harm in saying, I'm sure, Gayla, you don't talk to people about cancer at a 5-year-old level, if they're 70, and you're not going to talk to a 70-year-old like they're a 5-year-old. You have to have age appropriate conversations, but being the mom or the dad, stand outside that restroom, let somebody know, hey, I'll be out here when you're ready, that you are watching for your child, because predators don't want to fight. They want the easy grab. They're very organized, especially in stadiums, bigger areas. They have 3, 4, 5, 6 member teams working that same, lavatory area. And so I know I'm using my hands because when I get passionate.
It's right. They make you an honorary Italian.
But it's so simple. And yet, why do we not have that? Like you said, 2 minutes to go, forget what's on the movie screen. You can watch it again, or you know what, you'll hear the baseball game or whatever is going on while you're in that.
When it's all said and done, how important that is.
Right.
To have a child is the most important.
Absolutely.
First.
And their friends, if they have friends, maybe they have friends whose parents don't care. All of us have probably known that in our lifetime, seeing kids that aren't really all that well supervised, so it's up to us to teach them how to help each other be safe too.
Right.
Yeah.
And if something's going on in the schools, fight for your children's rights.
Yes.
I mean, you see a lot of these parents, they just kind of like sit back and say, well, that's the school policy. Well, take your kid out of the schools, homeschool them. There's so many different ways you can be a good parent to your children and go fight for. I watched a council meeting online with a father who went with his daughter, talking about, this free-for-all in the restrooms. Boys use girls' restrooms or whatever. And, they were like, would you want to be in there with a boy no, it's inappropriate. She said, she was a little kid, inappropriate. It's inappropriate. But these people don't think that, that they have, for whatever reason, people.
Well, there's a new level of quote unquote political correctness.
There you go.
Okay?
Yeah, there you go.
People are afraid they're going to get canceled. They're going to become called a misogynist, a racist, a bigot, of this, of that. The bottom line is that at some point you say, who are they? My dad used to have a saying, okay, you can tell, after you tell me what's wrong with you, then you can tell me what's wrong with me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I see a lot of people, even in the schools, that are ready to tell the parents off. But where do these people come from? Where are they making this political decision that's going to interfere with the future of this child, that's based upon their own socialization, their own political correctness, their own people that they're bragging about how they're this and they're that? No. Don't ruin that child because you want to be so, cool.
Instead of saying, and let's set politics aside for a second. Like you said earlier, it's not about right or left, it's about right against wrong. And how many of the people on these boards have children of their own who are grown and they have grandchildren? Are they going to sit there and tell people what can be done in the school to violate these children or to misappropriate information to these children so that they're making decisions that are not right for them? What gives them the right to be doing this inside the schools and whatever?
They have some sense of accountability down the road.
Exactly.
Let's say if they've advised a parent that that this child should have some sort of life-altering surgery, and because that child might kill themselves, then later the child realizes what's been done to them and can't restore their life, and they do become seriously depressed and want to kill themselves. What accountability should those people that made that that advisement to the parents, how much responsibility should they be held to? Because I think it should be serious.
I agree.
Well, like anything else, any complicity should be as actionable as doing the act. Omission, not acting, is as culpable in most states, most laws and states, as doing the act yourself. And if you can save somebody from burning to death in a fire or something, or an accident or whatever, as good Samaritans, we're supposed to do the decent thing, okay, instead of someone else will get to that, someone else will do it. But like you said, Blanquita, the complicity needs to also be held accountable, just like I don't care what files are open or not open. The point is, there were a lot more people involved in that whole mess that aren't even being talked about. They're not being arrested. They're not being accountable for everything that happened. We have this weird thing in America. We're so celebrity hungry, even if it's a bad celebrity, right?
Right.
And we're attracted to people in power and position, like it's some reality TV show. But what we need to do is get back to reality and say, we're going to lose the future of our country, of every village out there around the world, if we do not protect our children, if we do not stand up for our children and get back to valuing life.
Amen.
Right.
And how much fun would it be to be able to look at some schools and places where young people can develop their self-identity and their strength and their intelligence, in schools where they really have to compete for grades, and they have to have fun in sports that they don't have to worry about the political correctness. They can just get in there, and the girls can play in the girls volleyball team, and the guys can play in the boys volleyball team, and not everybody's trying to make a political statement.
Right.
These kids can actually have a life experience of being a child without all the the parents trying to be imposing this political statement.
And how much anger is out there? I wonder, like at these dinner tables, what do? Go home and say, "Hi, honey, guess what? I got a kid to change their identity today." I mean, what?
Yeah.
But even beyond that,
Yeah.
the child and now you have a lot of detransitioners happening. How in the world, are they going to be able to move forward with their lives when they have to have a life that has to be altered because of the fact they've been violated? They've been altered, literally, physically, mentally, spiritually. That somebody determined that they could play God with that kid.
Yeah. I want to, we don't have much time left. We have 3 minutes left. So I want to kind of bring this to a place where I think it's quite evident, given this conversation, that trafficking and the violation of the rights of children and human rights, the violation of human rights has caused so many different situations, so many different conversations to be had, that it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. There's so much to be had here. We are responsible for ourselves. We are responsible for those that are entrusted to us, whether we have given birth to them or whether we have adopted them or whether we have become friends with them. Those people in our lives who have gone through or may potentially go through something as horrific as trafficking. Andi, I have to tell you how you made it through and how you do what you do. And sometimes it's because of what we've gone through that our purpose shows up to be able to show the way for those who come behind you. The evidence is obviously here that this is something that is not just affecting the physical body, it's not just about the physical acts that are going on. It's about the damage that's been done, body, mind, and spirit, to these people who have undergone such horrific situations. And if you see something, say something. If you know someone that you can collaborate with to make a difference in your community, if you can stand for those who can't stand for themselves and be a voice, an advocate for those who are in need of that, do it. Have the courage to do it. This is not the time to sit down or walk away from or put blinders on, because you know what? And I say this all the time, just like Blanquita said, it's not about right or left. It's about right versus wrong.
Right.
And I want to say this. They say it in Sound of Freedom. God's children are not for sale. God's children are not for sale. And every single one of these ladies that you see here, I want to thank you for coming forth so powerfully in this conversation. Gayela, thank you so much for showing up and for what you're doing and the evidence that you're compiling that can help to bring more light on this subject and how horrific it is on every level. And Blanquita, we know that you and Andi are the voice for those who don't have a voice for themselves. And I'm glad to be standing in line with you guys, putting up the barriers for those who dare cross this with this vaccine here. You know,
go, girl.
Yeah.
Thank you, Teresa, for everything you do, for all your hard work. We love you too.
Yeah, and thank you for including me in this very important conversation. You get into it and you start thinking about one way, and then it balloons. There become so many other things that are part of it that you know. And I mean, it's mind-boggling, especially with what's going on in this world today. It really is.
And if I just want to put a plug in, if you need to be inspired, grab the Daily Gift of Inspiration, Teresa's new publication, her new book. Yeah, get you know, a page a day will change your world. I promise you, because who doesn't need more inspiration? We need more of that and less of the other. So
we want to invite them to go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com.
Yes, and you don't have to wait till the 26th of September to support this cause. You can go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com, make your donations there, but show up for what we're going to be putting together on the 26th of September. It's going to be online. All the information is out on social media, and be sure that every conversation that you're having with your family, your friends, even with yourself in the mirror, is going to make a difference in one way or another, whether it's through someone who needs your support in a trafficking situation, breaking free from that, or anyone who needs to be comforted in a way that hold a safe space for someone to speak about what's going on in their world. We all need the compassion. We are all connected to one another. And when one is hurting, we're all hurting. So make sure that you have the courage to stand up and make a difference. Have conversations like these with your family, with your friends, with your children, with your nieces and nephews, whoever it is that will listen to you, because it's through the awareness and through the fact that so many people are coming together to fight against this horrific crime against humanity that we're going to be able to make a difference. And with that, we'll see you next Tuesday. 5 p.m. Tuesdays, right here on YouTube, Facebook, and Facebook with Conversations That Make a Difference podcast. So we air live every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you then. Thanks, ladies. I'm so excited that you were all here.
That brings us to the close of another episode of Conversations That Make a Difference with host Teresa Velardi. We want to sincerely thank you for tuning in and sharing your time with us today. Our greatest hope is that today's discussion inspired your personal growth, encouraged you to share your unique gift, and gave you the courage to write your own magnificent story. If this message resonated with you, let's keep the conversation going. Take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on our Conversations That Make a Difference Facebook page. This will ensure you never miss a moment of inspiration. We air new episodes every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It truly helps us reach and empower more people. Until next time, keep making a difference. We look forward to welcoming you back next Tuesday to our next conversation.